Nomad PDU. Today I'm going to talk about the features and benefits of the V5.5 100 amp hour Ripper units. They're a live PO4 prismatic unit with Bluetooth built in. But really what I'm going to touch on today is building yourself a battery bank. So over the Christmas period, people are always looking around for 200, 300, 400 amp hour batteries because they want a bigger battery bank. The issue with that is it's great if you have a place you're going to permanently store it and you don't have to carry it around. However, there is no downside to have them split up into, say, 4 different units and have 400 amp hour battery bank. How do you do that? Like I've got here, I've got 300 amp hour of usable power, and it's very easy to connect up. And one of the benefits of this is that you can all have your own power source. So if your friends go out, and it's very typical that we sell four or five of these to a group of people that go out camping together, and they've all got the same unit. I say, well, okay, guys, what we'll do is when you're at the campsite, you can link them all together like that, and you've got 300 amp hour. The cool thing about that is like exactly what I'm doing here, which is this is actually my setup. So I'll run the 2 fridges off that, off a Y lead going into that one there, and we'll call that the master. And it's not typically a master and slave scenario because that's a master, really that's a master, that's a slave. You can have another one added on, but you call this one we're going to feed into the charge. So what I've got here is I'm going to use that as the master because I'm going to feed the charge into this one here. And then what I've got is I've got the voltage stabilizer going across. These are basically DC chargers. So what I'm doing is I'm taking 10 amp out of this one, putting 10 amp into that, taking 10 amp and putting into that. So it's basically like water. If you've got an IBCs on your block of land, you might have 10 of them hooked up and they're all feeding with a hose, and one feeds over, and the last one gets full, and etc. It works its way like that. So that's always going to stay full as long as I've got power in this one here. It's going to feed that one and so on. So this guy here, I'm running 300 watt solar panel directly to the Nomad. It has a 20 amp MPPT internally. It can take a maximum of 50 amp charge, so I could actually pull this out and plug on an AC/DC charger, say a 10 amp, and add another 10 I want to. But I don't need to. And this exact scenario, you don't really have to do anything because that's putting in very close to probably, my panel will probably put in 15 amp quite comfortably. So it's putting in 15 amp, and I've got 10 across. You notice across here, that's at 100%, that's at 100%, and this one's at 15% because I didn't have the actual solar connected to it just now, and I had it running like this for probably the last 3-4 days. So it was just feeding, and now that's got low. So what I've done here is I've got the 2 fridges running like that. I've also got a 600 watt inverter plugged into it. Now the cool thing about these is that an Anderson plug is an Anderson plug. It's a 50 amp rated. You can't go plugging 100 amp products into it. You can, but you're going to melt the Anderson and the wiring most likely. So these guys here, 50 amp output, 600 watt inverter will do things like all your Milwaukee fast chargers, all your tools of the trade. So we have a lot of tradespeople have this in the back of their utes or their canopies or whatever. Solar panel on the roof, DC charger when they drive to work, it's full. It runs their fridge, it powers their tools during the day. If they've got to put them on charge, fast chargers draw about 400 watt. And the 600 watt works perfectly. It does most things, cryovacs, anything you really want to do, it's going to do without too much trouble. So then what I've got here is I've got the Anderson here, I've got this connected up. So one of the things about 24 volt or air cons in DC environment, the DC air cons typically are quite power hungry in amperage. So this one here is a 24 volt system. You know, they're about 11 or 1200 bucks, but they do actually work. They drop down about 11 or 12 degrees if you're in say a 5-man tent. That'll drop it down quite comfortably, but it's going to draw about 18-20 amp. So if you only had one unit and you're going to be drawing say 18 amp an hour, so you're only going to get really 5 hours out of it. If you've got a big battery bank system like this, you could actually run that quite okay overnight, say for 8 or 10 hours. It does have a humidity kind of a setting that once it gets into the middle of the night, it drops down so it doesn't use as much amp. But if you had say 300 or 400 amp setting like this, you could quite happily use a step up like this, and that's actually taking 9 to 36 volt in. The Nomad's putting out 14.1 or 14, and that's going to convert it to 24 volt, and that's at 25 amp. So this will draw us at 18 amp. I don't want to fry the DC, so I'm never going to run them flat out. So I make sure I've got a higher rated unit, and they're easy to get. You can get them online. You can give us a contact at nomadpdu.com.au. We can advise you how to put them together. We can get these together for you if you wanted to, and that's basically Anderson. Look, we've gone a bit of overkill. We've got fusing in here, so these are 10 amp modules each. You could have a 20 amp module between, but if you're only putting in 15 amp like I'm doing here, and I'm putting 10 across to each, works fine. If I'm going to pull out 20, no real point unless I'm putting 20 in here. So it's just going to go fill across a bit like the water flowing. So I'm going to fuse them both in and out, Don't really have to if they didn't want to, but you're going to do it just as safety and just as a rule. I'd rather just have the fuses go than burn wiring, or maybe do a module. So this guy here will connect up to my 24 volt aircon, and then they can run at its 18 amp. And again, I've got say 400 or 300 ampere feeding, so I still can run that and have my fridges running at the same time. So again, they're a maximum of 50 amp output of the Andersons, but each of the units has a maximum of 100 amp constant output. So you could run 50 amp out of one of the Andersons, another 50 out of the other Anderson. You can do that. Like I'm pulling 10 out here to go across there, and then out of this I'm pulling 20. So I'm pulling 30 out there. That one over there where the two fridges are running and the inverters maybe running, that might be 60 amp. So I've still got plenty there. And again, even though it's like a master slave, you don't think, oh, we're going to use everything off the master. That's not correct, because it's still its own battery bank. And that's the great thing. You can still use all the Sigma plugs. You can still use all the USBs. And then you've got the ability to split them up, and they're only weighing 14 kilograms each instead of 100 kilograms for the bank. So most off-grid people are converting to the lower voltage DC options. Most of the accessories, white goods, etc., including washing machines and dishwashers, are available in the lower voltage stuff. So you don't really need running 3,000 watt inverters, which you can if you want to, but again, it defeats the purpose of running off-grid. These guys set up like that, you can pretty much do whatever you like. LCD TVs, you can get 52s and 70-inch TVs now that are in 12 and 24 volt options, and they're actually high definition quality and smart TVs. You can get all that stuff is now available, and you're better off converting over to that than spending $6,000 or $7,000 or $8,000 on a battery system just to try and keep up with your 240 system. The 240 is always going to suck and draw as much as it can out of your system, and converting from DC to AC, so converting and stepping up through inverters, you lose about 25% efficiencies anyway. So by going and converting everything to 12 or 24, you're keeping it in the lower voltage range, and then you're not actually putting the stress on the system as much. But again, you can run inverters if you want to. Like I said, 600s on these are okay. I could run two 600 watt inverters off that if I want to, or one 600, another 600 there. You can do as whatever you want. As long as the person that's managing the bank, there's someone that knows what they're doing or half knows, because everyone starts getting involved in it and they start forgetting it and they make their own stuff up and they assume things. Assuming when you're doing with anything with batteries or anything with power is not a really smart thing to do. You need to really know what you're doing as far as read the instructions. It is simple, but it's very easy to just get confused with the systems. Also look at accessories, look at the wattage, look at the draw, look at the peak wattage. Okay, when you look at the wattage of the unit, say if it's like these are 1280 watts watt hour, so you convert that to 100 amp hour. It's just 12.8, so they're 100 amp hour, and if you convert that to watt hours, it's 1280. So because it's basically 12.8 volt system. When they're fully charged, they'll be say 14.6, but when you disconnect the charger, they drop down. So over here, like 14 volt. This one over here is showing 13.2 because that's on charge and it's only at 16%. But this is just to give you an idea about what you can do with the Nomad system. If you've all got Nomads, you can actually, if you wanted to, had a customer today said he's got a larger unit. He's got an L series, so 135 or 200 amp hour, and he's got a V5, which is the other version, which is only a 12.6 voltage, stays at 12.6. But what you can do is you can use this one of these that's 9 to 36 volt in, converts it to 12.6, and yes, you could charge your Nomad V5 off your V5.5 for your LiFePO4, so you can be multi-chemistry, even though it's lithium, but they're not all the same. So you can convert that and charge that one if you wanted to, and you can have a V5 hanging off it. So if someone's got an old V5 and you're at a campsite, there's no reason to leave that sitting in the car. If you need the power, you can use it and keep it charged up. You could even charge the V5, and then from the V5 you could step it up to charge 14.6 and use the V5, which is what I do. I use the V5 as a slave just to feed in the solar. But the with the V5 though, it's got a 10 amp maximum unregulated, which means a 200 watt solar panel. But that's the only limitation. But throw it in the other way, doesn't matter. Put it on the end, use that if you want to. Chuck it in the mix, doesn't matter. As long as you remember what's coming into the DC and going out, that's all you got to remember. What's the profile of what you're charging, and what's the profile of the DC? That's 9 to 36 volts. So pretty much anything you're going to have, even if you grab yourself a 200 amp hour normal lithium battery off the ground, then pretty much you can connect that up like that, put yourself some clips on, then put in, and then an Anderson on the other end, connect the DC, and away you go. As long as you're charging the secondary battery at the right profile, that's what you've got to remember. So again, that's just really looking at how you utilize multiple Nomad V5.5 running a battery bank. If you're going to do full off gridding, if you're going to do tiny homes, if you're setting yourself up and you're building, you know, if you're building a home on a rural property and you're going to be there for 12 months, 18 months in the caravan, you know, put yourself a yurt tent up, you know, a safari tent, you know, which are really, really good quality. Put your aircon in there, run your fridges, get your cabinet fridges if you want to. Set yourself up with multiple Nomads, and even, you know, if you had 4 or 5 of these, you're talking about, say, 500 amp hour with the multiple, I guess, flexibility to be able to split them up and use them for different applications, and that's still only going to probably cost you $5,000. That's with, you know, 5 different units, and then it can run all this sort of stuff here. I could quite happily run 2 more fridges, which I normally do when I have 4 fridges running, and that can run simply off this sort of setup. So look, a lot to absorb, but if you're confused at all, contact at nomadpdu.com.au and we're happy to help you out. If you want to design something like this, or if you've got multi-chemistry at home and you want to be able to link these up, tell us what you've got, and we'll tell you what modules you need and just be able to connect them up. But always, again, just out of safety, make sure you fuse them, and also make sure the fuses are rated correctly. Don't have a fuse wiring rated at 10 amp, then have a 30 amp fuse in there because the wire's going to burn out first. So that's another thing people are doing, just grabbing a fuse and putting a big fuse in there, but not looking at the wiring, and it's an AWG, so the wide gauge. You need to look at those things as well. So contact at nomadpdu.com.au. Thanks again. Over Christmas, like I said, this is where that sort of came about, because a lot of people had multiples and they were saying, how do we link them all together? You can just get yourself these modules here. We can send you a line diagram if you like. So again, contact nomadpdu.com.au, any questions, and I'm sure that we'll talk again on another